Full talk from the president during the State of the Union address last night. Our own power panel here to take a look at the reaction and the big picture themes that the president discussed. And Republican reaction getting a lot of reaction today. That after the South Carolina governor, Nikki Haley, in the GOP rebuttal, decided to rebut one of her own, Donald Trump. Is the Republican Party trying to crash the Donalds? Then we are in Albany for Governor Cuomo's State of the State address. He's got big plans, but the question is, does the state have the money to pay for them? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, the speech or the speeches are done, but the reaction to the State of the Union, it keeps pouring in. New Yorker magazine calling it darkly optimistic. Atlantic describes it this way. It was a somewhat unusual speech, surprisingly devoted to rebutting Republican candidates for president, unusually loose and humorous, and elsewhere strikingly cerebral. Now, the president did discuss big themes, and he delivered a speech unlike the other 6 State of the Unions he's given.
Anyone claiming that America's economy is in decline is peddling fiction.
In his final State of the Union, President Obama challenged critics who say America on his watch is in decline.
The United States of America is the most powerful nation on earth, period.
Obama pitched optimism for the future and the case for a Democrat to succeed him, taking a veiled swipe at the Republican candidates who've attacked his strategy for ISIS.
And our answer needs to be more than tough talk or calls to carpet bomb civilians. That may work as a TV soundbite, but it doesn't pass muster on the world stage.
And even Speaker Paul Ryan applauded this line, which seemed aimed directly at Donald Trump.
And that's why we need to reject any politics that targets people because of race or religion.
With Republican control of Congress, Obama skipped the usual laundry list of policy proposals, but gave a boost to Vice President Biden's plan to cure cancer, that after he lost his son to the disease last year.
I'm putting Joe in charge of mission control. For the loved ones we've all lost, let's make America the country that cures cancer once and for all. What do you say, Joe? Let's make it happen.
Governor Nikki Haley of South Carolina, a daughter of Indian immigrants and a conservative star, responded to Obama on behalf of Republicans.
The president's record has often fallen far short of his soaring words.
And she seemed to respond to the tone of some in her own party as well.
During anxious times, it can be tempting to follow the siren call of the angriest voices. We must resist that temptation.
All right, let's bring in our panel here to discuss last night. Richard Brodsky is a former Democratic New York State Assemblyman, now a senior fellow at Demos and a professor at NYU. Democratic New York State Senator David Carlucci. He joins us as well, as does Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent, who was on the ground in Washington. We'll get to some of the interviews you had, Andrew. I'm curious, the reaction afterwards, were people like, what was that? Or predictable? I mean, we knew there wasn't going to be the laundry list. We knew that there was going to be the Morning in America kind of thing, that this was an optimistic view. But I thought also it was tinged with regret that he wasn't able to break through the morass of Washington. What was the takeaway when the cameras were off with some of the electeds in the room?
You know, it's funny, as the evening wore down, or the early morning wore down last night after the State of the Union address, I started trying to figure out and play back in my head what the lawmakers had been telling me, and it dawned on me that you could have taken the reaction from lawmakers from last night's State of the Union and played it after really any of the other Obama State of the Union addresses that I've covered, and it would be almost identical. It would be, you know, Republicans saying, yeah, there were some things that I liked in there, and I would have liked to have seen more in this, and he's been very weak on these areas. And Democrats saying, boy, you know, this president has had nothing but unparalleled obstruction. He hasn't been able to get through his agenda. It's an important reminder of that. But we've heard similar things like that in other years. So even though the format of the speech was different, I don't think reaction to it was significantly different, at least from the lawmakers who were in the room with the president.
Timing, Richard, to me was a little bit different in that I was thinking, you're a professor at NYU, I could have seen this president next February going to the campus at NYU and delivering this. It almost felt like a postscript to his administration, in that this is what we did, these were the hardships we ran into. Moreover, and I know, lame duck and all the rest, but they would have said that about 2015. He got a lot of stuff done then it almost seemed that there was a resigned tone to it.
Well, I think there was not a wistful tone. It might be better than resigned. Look, he did some very practical political things in the guise of a soaring rhetorical flourish. He set up the campaign that we're just about to embark on, and he made the case for the Democratic progressive agenda, and he did it well. That it didn't move any of the people who it never has moved is unsurprising. The target here was not the people you were interviewing. The target here were people at home who are undecided about how they want to take the future of the country. So he was trying to steer the politics of 2016. As to whether he did a good job of that or not, it's to be seen.
Last night, we had Republican and Democratic former Congress people who recently served in Washington, certainly under this president. And we also opened up the phone lines, and it was interesting. Like Richard said, you could you close your eyes, you knew who the Republican and the Democrat were as soon as they talked, especially when they talked about the legacy they think this president will leave behind, place in history, etc. But the callers were interesting. Some loved the idea of we can do better, we're not, a nation in decline. They liked that, and others were like, what was that? I'm used to saying this is what we're going to do, not what we did. Right. So I got kind of a muddled response to last night, more so than previous State of the Unions. Usually you go in two camps. There seemed to be a third camp, like, I'm not sure what to make of it.
Yeah, that's what my thought was. I was watching it last night. In my experience is the sixth State of the State with Governor Cuomo, you juxtapose the two, it's night and day. President Obama it seemed defeated. I'm a fan of the president's. It was unfortunate that he didn't talk more about this is the plan, this is what we're going to do, even if it fell on deaf ears in Congress. At least lay that plan out. You juxtapose that to Governor Cuomo, the State of the State, it's we're doing A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We're doing all these things. I'm laying it out for you. It's an ambitious agenda, but we have a plan and we're getting it done. The president seemed more just rhetoric. It seemed more, hey, we tried.
Yep.
And that was unfortunate. That's very unfortunate.
Considering that one of the cases he was making is that we need to tamp down the partisanship in our government and in our politics right now, it felt like a very partisan speech surrounding that message.
It was an attempt to define the election campaign that's beginning.
I understand that, but in the same speech, he's saying, we need less partisanship, and he's giving a very partisan speech.
Two things to me surprised me on a specific basis. One was, he said the word gun one time. One time. And this, a defining issue that he says his biggest regret in all this, he's made it clear, don't look to me. I did my executive order here. It's limited as to what it can be by definition, but that's it. Don't hold your breath that I'm going to do much more on this. The second thing was, I think he effectively argued why all the ramped up rhetoric of making parking lots in the Middle East and all the rest was just that, a lot of hot air, and it sounds good. You can talk tough until you get in the Oval Office. But I was expecting a little bit more of a strategy as to how he was going to defeat ISIS beyond just what we're doing right now. I don't think that was too much to ask, which is issues one is the economy of the American public, issues two is national security. The public wanted to hear that, and I know it was a political speech, but I didn't get that one either. Were you surprised you didn't hear more about guns and more about exactly the path forward with ISIS?
I wasn't surprised we didn't hear more about guns. I spoke after the address with Congresswoman Elizabeth Esty, whose district includes Newtown, and I also talked with Carolyn Maloney from New York City, and they both said, the president focused a lot on guns last week, and so he's done that. And we had the thing with the victims of gun violence and the empty seats at the State of the Union. And in a speech where he is ostensibly trying to bridge the political divide, that's a fairly divisive issue to really hammer on. So neither one of them were particularly surprised or put off in any way that
as
he
I
didn't
listen to these comments, the critique is he didn't give the speech I would have given. Okay. Not specific enough.
I didn't hate it.
Well, the one thing he did talk about, which I was surprised and I was happy to see, he did say he wanted to tackle addiction, particularly the heroin epidemic. And if you notice that, and that was missing from the governor's State of the State today, unfortunately. But I know that it has been a priority of the governor's. But I'm anxious to see, okay, what's the plan? You said, hey, we're going to do one or two things. Just let's talk a little bit about it.
Left. He's not in a planning stage.
Really.
He's in a
Not
post-planning stage.
But at least
He doesn't really have
you're
12
going to talk.
He's got 6 months.
You're going to spend an hour, talk a little bit more about, hey, this is what I want to do.
I want a
How we
political
gonna do
question for you, which is, you said it yourself. He laid out a progressive argument. Okay?
You did?
If you were Bernie Sanders and you were Hillary Clinton listening to that speech last night, did the president make a more convincing argument for who to succeed him and his policies in the White House?
Well, I don't think he had to choose between Sanders and Hillary. I think in the end, his message was any Democrat is better for the people of the country than any Republican. And that is why it was an attempt to fight this, if you will, on ideological and factual grounds. It was very important that he said, anyone who says the economy is weak is peddling fiction. He's setting, look, I can understand why people wanted a different speech, but I'm not of that view. And if you were going to judge the speech for what he intended it to do, he did it pretty well.
I would also, my final observation on the speech, and I was thinking about this today also, it felt just utterly insignificant in the larger scheme of things. This was not, I don't think a lot of eyeballs were on this, the president last night. I don't think it's going to inject into the national debate to a large degree. I don't think it's going to find its way into the 2016 debate all that much. I think, frankly, he could have put Kim Kardashian out there and had her read 5 minutes worth of stuff, and that would have had a deeper impact on the American public than the president's speech last night.
Not just for him. It's these speeches generally, State of the States and State of the Unions, are reducing in significance.
All right. Well, we talked about the Democratic argument the president tried to make last night. And when we come back, less than 3 weeks from Iowa, and we're going to take a look at the 2016 race. And now it's not just Donald Trump's competition that's trying to take him down. Did the Republican Party itself just take its broadest broadside, if you will, at the bow of the Donald? We'll look at that after this.